This is an overview of the Canon 1000D digital camera. It was launched in June 2008, so it's been around for a couple of years now. But as it's classed as an entry-level camera, it's typically one of the cheapest ways to get into SLR photography. And here's the camera up close. First, it's worth pointing out that in Europe they call this the 1000D, as you can tell by the logo on the bottom right of the camera. In America they call it the Digital Rebel XS. Although essentially it is the same camera, the name just changes depending upon which part of the world you end up buying the camera from. It's a 10.1 megapixel camera and it weighs 502 grams. Now if you compare it to the weight of other cameras, that is pretty light, and that's down to two factors really. Firstly, it is slightly smaller than the alternative digital cameras you can get, and secondly it is a plastic body construction as opposed to a metal one. So that means it is lighter, but it also does feel a bit more fragile, and you probably want to be careful not to drop it. The camera itself has 7 focusing points, and if I turn it around you can see that it has a 2.5-inch LCD screen on the back, and turning it around further still you have a compartment on the side and you can see that it takes SD cards as memory. Going into more detail about the various buttons and functions on the camera. So at the front you've got your shutter release button. Right behind that you have got a slider wheel. You'd use that for changing things like your aperture size, your shutter speed for example. There's a very well positioned ISO button directly behind that. Basically that means that you can actually change your ISO levels on the fly whilst you're looking through the viewfinder, which I find saves quite a lot of time. You'll notice that on the top of the 1000D there actually isn't a little LCD screen or anything like that. You generally get that on the higher models, but on this one obviously you don't get one. Standard menu selector wheel at the top here to go between your various modes. You can change your what focusing element you wish to use with this button in conjunction with the slider wheel at the front. Again, that's very easy to use whilst you're looking through the viewfinder. On the back of the camera itself you've got a 2.5-inch LCD screen for reviewing your pictures, which is a pretty decent size. Standard buttons for changing things like your exposure levels, your white balance. To change the white balance you have to use the cursors at the bottom of the camera rather than the actual slider wheel at the top. Delete your pictures at the bottom, re-review your pictures with that button there. There's the menu button on the side, so that brings up the various different settings so you can adjust your camera. On the side here you have the panel, which if you flip it back you can then connect the camera to external